全てを破壊し、全てをつなげ。
Hello and welcome to the first episode of my Kamen Rider Decade series review. I am Wes, the Average Trainer, and we're starting strong with episode 1 of, as I mentioned before, Kamen Rider Decade. So right off the bat, you can see that this episode is something special because it starts off with the Rider War to end all Rider Wars. And I thought that was a really cool sequence. It really just puts you right in the middle of the action. You see all of these old costumes come back. You see all of the different vehicles like the Denliner and such. You saw all the supplemental riders, the secondary riders, the Ryo Troopers. It was just, what a great way to set the season up with a mystery. Who is this guy that can take down all of these Heisei riders? And you notice I have to say Heisei riders because there were no Showa riders as far as I could tell from this Rider War series, which makes sense because this season was originally intended to be the anniversary of the Heisei series, which kind of changed up a little bit later on down the road, but I digress. It is a super cool way to set the season up. Just seeing all those old rider suits was something. Like, you know, if you discounting the Kiva Denno movie, you never really saw the old Heisei riders again after their series ended. I mean, I know that there was I think it was a Kuga and Agito hyper battle video, but other than that, in the Kiva Denno crossover movie, I don't really think they ever really brought any of the rider costumes back after that. I mean, except for like stage plays and such, which, you know, if you're an American fan, you don't really see that stuff anyway. So that is super cool, you know. And it was one of the, well, not one of the first things I watched, but this was the second series, the second season that I started pretty much fresh on. So, I mean, I watched Kiva as it was airing, and that was the first Rider series that I saw. And then I went back and watched Faiz and Denno and Kabuto, you know, between all those episodes while I was waiting week to week for Kiva. And then, but this is the one that I like started fresh, the second series that I started fresh on as it was airing. So, yeah, it was interesting after watching Kiva and then all those 3 other series that I watched to see some of these costumes back that I was familiar with. So, like I said, a lot of great mysteries right off the bat, especially with that opening. I mean, that opening sequence was super, like, what is going on here? There are, like, photos inside glass jars, and she's holding up this big canister above her head, and I don't know, is she going to kill somebody? What's going on? Why is Tsukasa crying? What are all these photos about? You know, you see all these silhouettes of the old riders, you know, just popping in and out there, and them fighting, and it's just like, you know something's going on here. Rider versus Rider battles definitely came into vogue during these Heisei seasons, but this just kicked it up a notch. Kicked it up to 10, I guess, because this is the 10th anniversary series, so it can't really go up to 11, but this kicked it up to 10. So instead of going, you know, point by point through the episode and hitting all the story points, I just want to talk about a few things in relation to the characters right now, specifically 3, Tsukasa, Natsumi, and Wataru. I can't really, it's hard to say it with the accent without feeling like I'm just like disrespecting the language, but Wataru. So anyway, Tsukasa, let's start with him. He's an amnesiac who just wants to take pictures of the world but can't seem to get any good ones. He kind of plays it off like he's the super cool guy who, you know, oh, this world just can't handle me and all that. But you can definitely feel like there's something he's hiding. You know he's hiding something. Just based on that opening, because he starts crying, you see the little half of his face, you know, with all the different rider masks as he's falling down. He just seems extremely vulnerable in the opening sequence. And in this, he just feels like he's playing off a lot of things, which, you know, well, maybe he's not hiding something as much as he's just concealing what he's really thinking about the situation, because he has amnesia and he's playing it off like he's the super cool guy. And obviously, you know, he dodges all those like mobsters, I guess is what I'd call them. He dodges all of their punches and everything, and he is a cool guy, but there's just something more underneath. And I think this episode does good justice to show you that this is a multifaceted character. This isn't just, you know, I hate to say it, but this is not Kabuto. He is not Tendo Soji. As much as he tries to, he wants to be Tendo, but he's failing miserably. Well, not failing miserably, but he's not up to that snuff. Tendo was just untouchable. Tsukasa is a bit below that, so I think it definitely does good justice to him. And obviously he knows how to use the Rider system with his cards, his buckler, or whatever you call it. Cards, buckle, however Wataru phrased it. And he knows how to use the Decade cards, and he knows how to use the 3 and the particular aspects of each of the Rider that he's transforming into, like Kabuto and his clock up ability, Auto-Vision with Faiz, and the sword on Auto-Vision, the Ongekibo Reika for Hibiki, and yeah, I just thought, whoa, that's pretty interesting. Like, he knows exactly what to do, and he even questions this during the course of the episode. He's like, why am I able to fight? What is this? I don't actually know what this is. So he definitely has amnesia. He doesn't know what he's doing necessarily, but his body's just kind of moving automatically. So right away, he's been trained for this. He's practiced. So his identity is immediately suspect. And obviously I know what goes on down the road, but just based on this first episode, I think they really, like I said, do a good job showing you there's a mystery here that needs to be solved. Let's move on to Natsumi. Not a whole lot to say about her. She obviously dreams of Decade and the Rider War, and it sets her up in a really mysterious way. She seems to be a fairly normal girl, but the way Tsukasa cares for her, it kind of makes you wonder if she might be a little bit more. And obviously being able to dream the future and, figure out, oh, hey, what is Decade? Oh, I just found this buckle in cards, and that guy turned into Decade, and he's involved in our shop, and this is probably problematic. Which, yeah, I think that's interesting. She seems like a nice character, though. And there's nothing really that you dislike about her, maybe except for that little laughing pressure point thing. That was kind of weird. But other than that, she seems like a fairly normal character and with a little mystery behind her. And then, obviously, Wataru, he is definitely different than how he was in his season. I mean, because this season aired back-to-back. Kiva ended, Decade started. So you saw Wataru right at the end of Kiva, that last episode there, and comparing him to that last episode and this first episode, he is a different character. It would be really interesting to compare and contrast the two appearances that he has, because he's a different Wataru. And I think that whatever happened in the interim between Kiva and Decade, I think that's a story worth telling, honestly. And they don't really get into it later on down the road in any detail, but they have a lot of hints there. And with some of the fan theories, you can kind of guess why Wataru is a way different type of character. He's coming off in a completely different way. And I think that's a good mystery to leave off on. I say that word a lot in this episode, mystery, but it really is a mystery. And it's a good one. Anyway, I talked about the characters a bit. Let's talk about a few points in the episode. I wrote down about how there's so many references to the older Heisei seasons, and I think that's a really good thing, because obviously this being an anniversary series, you want to have references to the old series, since you're celebrating basically the 9 seasons that came before it. So, I mean, you heard the Mirror World sound when Natsumi is walking around, and you even see Ryuki in one of the reflections. The Imaginar going around trying to grant wishes and everything, but they're really creepy while doing it. The worm obviously copied Natsumi's appearance. The dead victims were transforming into Orphanox, which, good callback to Faiz. The Fangai were just immediately eating humans. I think it was in the rain, too, so that offered a significantly creepier atmosphere. It's a good way to allude to the older series, but not be entirely off-putting for new watchers. I mean, I remember showing this to my buddy in college when the first episode aired, and he didn't really know anything about Kamen Rider. He only knew that it was a series, and he enjoyed it. Like, he wasn't able to follow along with everything, but he wasn't totally lost either, as far as I remember. Wataru talks to Tsukasa later on in the episode and asks him if he remembers anything. Tsukasa says no, and he only remembers how to fight. Based on that, you would probably think that Wataru probably met Tsukasa at one point when Tsukasa still had his memory. And what he says to Tsukasa is really weird, in that all of the Rider worlds, they were distinct separate stories, and now they're coming together. And that Tsukasa's mission is basically he must destroy all the Kamen Riders, and that Wataru and his friends will keep this world from being destroyed until Tsukasa's done with his mission. And that's really his mission. And as we'll find later on, Tsukasa doesn't really stick with this mission. So I wonder, had he stuck with the mission, would something different have happened? Really? I don't know. But I think it's definitely something worth exploring in fan theories. I think having the photo studio as their base of operations is a good idea. It provides a familiar set to the audience, and the portraits that represent the different worlds that they just travel to really give a nice visual representation of some of the fundamental aspects of that Rider season. The one we see in this episode, obviously, is Kuga's world, and the portrait that comes down has the police cars like right front and center, and you know that Kuga, there is a lot of police involvement in Kuga, and that gives it a nice little added touch. And as we'll see later on, a lot of the portraits are really fitting, and I'd love to have some of those on my wall, honestly. At the end of the episode, they set off to Kuga's world to be the first world that they travel to. Not that they chose it, but not that the characters chose it, but obviously the writers chose it. And I think that was a good choice for the start of the season, since it connects you right back to the start of the, well, not the start, but the first of the modern Heisei seasons, discounting the ones that came in the 90s. And, it connects you back because this is the anniversary. So that's the first one in the anniversary that they're celebrating. So go right back to where it started there. And showing immediately that this is a totally different Kuga. This is not the same actor. I think that helps the audience get used to the fact that these are not exactly the original Rider worlds that they're used to. And there are going to be a lot of changes, which, was probably a controversial move, but they just showed it and moved right on, and they don't really dwell on that fact, which I find interesting. But anyway, that's about all I have to say about this episode. I've always maintained that this is a great first episode. There's plenty of mystery to speculate on, lots of action and fan service for those who are familiar with Kamen Rider, and there are interesting characters that you follow right off the bat. Whatever happens for the rest of the series is beside the point. This is an awesome first episode, and I think they really introduced the concept well. So if you have any questions, let me know, comment, like, subscribe, do all those things. And until next time, remember, everyone is a traveler.
仮面ライダーディケイドは楽しい時を作る企業バンダイとご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りしました。